Hello YouTube, this is Dr. Satish Singhal, PhD, Professor of Computer Science. Today I'm here to show you how to do output in C language. This is especially for my students at Santa Monica College who are taking C programming course, CS50. So first I'm going to make some basic presentation through this PowerPoint. And then I'm going to show some code in C language. I'll be using Xcode, but it's going to work pretty similar in Microsoft Visual Studio. Okay, so let's get started. Output mechanism C language. You can make a simple string output as follows. So output in C is mostly done to console. Special code libraries are needed to do output to additional sources. If you want to output to file or database or to a picture screen, additional code will be needed. But to output to console, C has a special function called Printf built into stdio.h library, which is included pretty much always. And that facilitates output of literal constants, that is hard-coded data, named constant, you have defined a constant, and variables of all kinds. So if you want to output a simple literal string in C, that could be outputted by a simple statement like this one. Let's say if you want to print hello world onto the console and move cursor to the next line for next output, if any, then you'll simply write this printf quotes hello world /n and quotes closed. Meaning of this is that just print hello world, and if there is next output or anything, move the cursor to the next line. There is a function called puts that can also be used to output a string, but generally it's not used very often, but you can use it if you like. Okay, but of course there are other data types that needs to be outputted. So outputting data other than string, give me a pen color blue. Okay, other than the string or even string output mixed with other data type, that requires knowing identity of the data before the output and input can be done. In this video we won't talk about input. So, but we'll mention it. C program needs to know the following about variables before inputting and outputting them: their data type and their names. That name defines the location of the variable, data type defines a mechanism to print them basically. C cannot do anything with a variable input and output unless it knows its data type. So next slide gives brief introduction to C data type, in fact next several slides. And meaning of data type is that each variable type gets certain storage facility and restrictions, and storage facility and restrictions are decided by its data type. Okay, that's why data type is needed. C is a typed language as opposed to JavaScript, which is not a typed language. It's a strongly typed language. Okay, so let's talk about first data type, which is int or whole number. Okay, before creating a variable in a program, C program needs to do following: how much memory to allocate for a variable, what is the variable name, Computer can't do anything without knowing these about a variable. A type is decided when a variable is created. Each type has storage restrictions. Okay. For example, if you want to declare number of students in a class, that would be declared like this. Int means it will be a whole number, and based on this name, computer is going to create a storage location with certain number of bytes, and that's the variable name, number of students. So above declaration creates a memory location with the name number of students, which can only store whole numbers. And that makes sense because number of students cannot be 10.5 or 9.8. It has to be a whole number. Okay. The word int tells computer the type value of the storage location. Type value has information as to how many bytes to assign for that storage location, and what kind of number in this case can be stored there. The word number of students tell computer the name value of the storage location as to what it will be called. This sequence is non-commutative. That means sequence of using them, int first, number of students next, which it could be any other name, is fixed. You can't move them around. You can't say take int out of here, put it there. That would not work. Okay. There are additional data types that can store whole numbers like short and long. We shall discuss them in other presentations. Okay. Then we want to also deal with real or floating point numbers. Real numbers or floating point number can have two parts, integer part or decimal parts. For example, 3.9. In 3.9, 3 is the integer part, 0.9 is the decimal part. Either part, by the way, can be 0. Both can be 0 too. This is the example of declaring floating point numbers. Double GPA. In this declaration, computer creates a memory location with name GPA, which can store whole numbers or numbers with decimal parts. Okay, but whole number will not be without a decimal part, without a 0 decimal part. Okay. There are additional data types that can store floating point numbers, which are like float and long double, and we should discuss them in some other presentation. Okay. Then finally, another data type very often used is char. Its actual name is character, street name, but we only shorten it to char. They only can store a single character. Example would be like this: char mid initial, somebody's middle initial. That creates a memory location with mid initial, which can store a single character. Single character in C is just 1 byte or 8 bits. Okay. Okay. Printf is used. A function printf is used to make an output, but also to format output, and it works as follows. You can take simple example first, detailed example later. This is inbuilt in stdio.h library, and we'll have printf parenthesis quotes, some text, and text could extend pretty much any length. And then we want to, after the text, we want to output the value, the data which is called value, but computer needs to know what type it is and what format to apply. Format usually, of course, includes two things. If it's a floating point number, how many decimals to show, and is there space left before or after, and things like that. Okay. Now this sum text is outputted literally, whatever that happens to be. But format string that is applied to this applies to that, tells computer up to two things. What data type is being outputted in variable name value, what format to apply this. And format could format decimal points, it could do rounding of decimal points, or it could leave some space before and after. This is very important part in use of printf. You can already see that there is a mapping and harmony between format string and the data to which this format string applies. So this harmony between format string and data to be output using that format string is the heart of C language output system, and this must be learned. This is where students have problem, because this requires more concentration. It requires more attention to harmony and mapping. Okay, we can also insert line break, which is /n, as needed in the format string anywhere. Okay, so this part is very important. If you're not clear about this, rewind the video and review it again. In your textbook, make sure you read the portion on printf because that will give you additional information. Okay, video is video. Combination of video and textbook would be ideal. All right, so now let us see harmony and mapping between format string and data output in a C program. For that, we're going to go to our compiler Xcode and use the printf and format strings for data output. Okay, so let's go to our compiler Xcode. So here I have declared 4 variables. Age, on last birthday obviously, otherwise it can be whole number. 20, a student whose GPA is 3.8, whose middle initial is P, whose name is George P. Washington. This method of declaring a string is standard in C. This is array notation. I won't talk about that here, but all I can tell you that if you want to store a string in a variable, you can use this syntax. Now, first, I'm going to print all this data, not necessarily in the order in which it's given, because you don't have to stick to order in which data are declared and populated. So first I'm going to print person's name only. So let me comment out this from here, excuse me, to here, so that we can see one at a time. Okay, let's see if I can fold this. I may not be able to. It folded the whole thing. Don't want that. Okay, so first I'm only outputting their name. So notice the format string. This part is literal. It should say hello and space. %s is the format string for string. That simply means that when outputting, take value stored in name and literally plug it in here. So it should say hello George P. Washington and the dot /n means that next output should be on the next line, and let's run it and we'll see the result. Okay, I have to comment this out too. Sorry about that. I have to comment out all the way up to here. So now you can see correspondence between line 11 and its output. This is not part of our output. That's done by Xcode. So you can see that hello and space showed up literally. Then, as I said, where %s is, that's a format string for this variable. So what computer did, it took the value of this, which is George P. Washington, and literally plugged it in, George Washington. And then the dot, it gives a dot. /n means if I'm going to have the next output, it'll be on the next line. So you can see now mapping and harmony between format string, one example of that, and the data being output. Okay, wherever this is, the argument or value or variable name value stored in this is just plugged in, and that you see that. Okay, now I'm gonna comment this out, but comment in next one. Okay, now it says you are certain number of years old. If you remember, age was declared 20. Don't worry about these things, warnings, it'll compile and run. So meaning of that is that age variable stores 20. So up to here is literally printed you are. Format string means that take value stored in this variable, plug that in here, and then space years old dot literally to be printed /n means print next output on the next line. Let's run this and we'll see harmony and mapping between format string and the variable age. And it says you are 20 years old because age was storing 20. Now here's something that students forget. So let's comment this back in. Format string is different for each data type. For the string, format string was %s, and it's case sensitive. You cannot put uppercase s there. Here we have in data type. Format string for that is %d. And it's confusing. Why do the %? Well, that's the mechanism for computer to recognize what data type it's going to print. That's all there is to it actually. So location of format string for that data type determines where it's going to insert it, and its value in this letter decides what type it is. Okay, well then let's comment this next one, which is the GPA. Okay, so look at the format string here. This is LF. LF means long float. Long float means this is higher precision than the float. And that's why you use the double. So when you use double data type, format string for that is %LF. Okay, let's see what we get here. So we had already discussed first two line. This line 13 gives me this output. Your GPA is 3 point, and it gives you some significant figures that system is designed to give. 2, 4, I think it's 6. Yeah. So by default it's supposed to give you 6 significant figures, and it's doing that. But of course sometimes it's not good. We want to limit significant figure in the mantissa. Well, you can certainly do that. We'll do that next. If I do after the percent sign 0.2 and then LF and then print the GPA, that's a indication to the system that limit mantissa to 2 decimal point. Let's run it and see if that happens. And this time line 14 prints this one. Your GPA is 3.8. So we told it to limit to 2 decimal place, not to 0.2, and it did that. So that has the most information as far as format string is concerned. LF means my data type is double type, long float. 0.2, which has to come before LF, means limit this to mantissa in this to 2 decimal points. And of course LF means this is double type. Okay. So now it's labor intensive to learn and learn what the format strings are, learn their placement, require some practice. But this was fundamentally introduced in C language very first time. So they did the best they could. Can it be made easier? Maybe. Will it be done to make it easy? I don't think so. So it's labor intensive, but it has to be learned. So format string for string is %s, for integer is %d, for double is %lf, for float it will be just %f, and your textbook will give you that. When you use 0.2 or 0.3, in 0.2 it will limit it to mantissa will be limited to 2 decimal point, and you can just put any number here. It's going to expand or contract the mantissa. In fact, it will be also do the rounding. We're not going to show that here. But let's take the character. Mid initial character was P, and this time I'm going to output that. And this time format string for character is C, %C. Character data type, middle initial. So up to here will be literally outputted. I'm telling computer to copy and paste the value of this variable here, and it matches the format string C for character, and it gives me that, your middle initials P. Okay, you can always do this line by line. It's not a problem. But for efficient programming, we could output everything in one printf statement. That means we're going to have multiple variables printed at the same time. That requires a little bit more expert programming, but we're going to show you here how that is done. So I'm going to comment out this one up to here. And just do everything in one statement. And I need to get rid of this. So now we'll combine all variable outputted in a single printf call. That's again as well labor intensive, but let's see how I've done it. So can I collapse this code folding folder? No, I folded the whole thing. Okay, it's not available, see, for code folding. So the way we do is, first we say hello space, so we put that in. Then the name George P. Washington, that is stored in the name variable. So we put %s format string for that and the dot. Then we say /n, that means this should be printed on the next line. And we say you are %year-old. So first format string applies to first variable, second format string applies to second variable. This line means that inside printf I can just write things on multiple lines. Otherwise, if I add this, the line will be too long. Don't want to do that. Don't want to scroll horizontally. So you can do multiple parts to printf in multiple lines by putting this /. Okay, this means put a line break before you print this, and then we say your GPA is, and now this format string which says the next output, which is GPA third. So count, don't lose your count. Number one, number two, number three, number three. So this is a long float or double and limit mantissa to 2 decimal places. This means go to the next line, hit this one, give a line break, and then your middle initial is up to here literally as it is. Then apply format string to this character, which is the last output. Okay, so let's just do this only now. And we have this line. Now we will combine all variables output in single printf call, this one. And now you see how beautiful it is actually. Labor intensive but beautiful. So here you are saying hello. So hello space showed up. Then I'm telling computer, take this format string, apply to this, or take this data, which is George P. Washington, and physically copy and paste it here when you output, and it did. See, George P. Washington. Okay, and then the full stop, and the full stop shows up. Then I told computer, give a line break, do the next output in the next line, and it did that. It moved from this line to here, and then I'm telling it you are space, so it did that, you are space, and then I'm saying argument 1, argument 2, so apply this to next argument, age. Remember that was 20, so it basically plugs in 20 here, and then space year-old dot space year-old is done. Then I go to this, put a line break, that means this line will be on the next line, and then I'm telling computer that from here to here print literally, and it does. Your GPA is this, space, and now I'm saying the third argument GPA, pretty much copy and paste that here with 2 decimal point in mantissa, and knowing that this is a long float or double, and it does that. Mantissa is limited to decimal point. And then finally I'm saying /n means go to next line, up to here it is literal, your middle initial is, and there is a space. And then I'm saying, okay, go to the last argument, that's a character. So realize that's a character and copy and paste that value here. And it does, it copies and pastes P here. So you could do this. You could do entire output as long as variables are known or populated in one printf statement. It's labor intensive. But there's nothing wrong you doing it in multiple lines also. So maybe in the beginning you should adopt this system, multiple lines, and when you are more practiced you can do that in one printf statement. So right now, that's all we're going to say about outputting data in C. Later on, we might do more on it, but I think for now, this is all we're going to do. Say, thank you so much from Dr. Singhal.